Whether you're an all grain or an extract brewer, water chemistry can either make or break your next brew. Now, water chemistry, it sounds complicated, scary, nerdy, but today I'm going to break all that down and I'm going to give you 3 simple things you can start doing today to make better beer. Let's go. Now, the first thing that can either make or break your brew is the water you start with. Now, some people like to use distilled water, demineralized water, which you can get from the shops or dispensaries. Some people even have their own RO system, and I've done a video on that, how I use an RO system, and it solved this problem in my own brewing at home. Now, some people don't have any of that and they use tap water for their brewing. Now, the problem with tap water is it has sanitizer in it. Either chlorine or chloramines are the most common that are used in the industry. Now, what do you do about this and why is it a problem? Well, chlorine can bind to the phenol compounds in hops and give you this compound called chlorophenols in your finished beer. And what that presents as is a rubbery, spicy, Band-Aid-like taste is what these things have been described as. This compound becomes particularly prominent in hoppy beers because there's more hops, more phenols for the chlorine or chloramines to bind to. So what can we do to fix this problem? Well, chlorine's not too bad. And so if your municipal water supply uses chlorine will evaporate in a boil, or if you leave the water out overnight, it's pretty volatile and you'll get away with it. Now, chloramines are more stubborn. They're not as volatile, so they hang around in your water. So you've got to do something to get rid of them. That's why a lot of people use filtration and the RO setup like I've talked about in a previous video. Or you can use other chemicals to try and drop them out of solution. Vitamin C, ascorbic acid, if you can get your hands on some of that at the local chemist, local pharmacy, that will bind these compounds and drop them out of solution. So that's a quick, easy fix if you don't have or don't want to invest in any sort of filtration mechanism or get water that's free from this stuff from another source. So that's my tip number 1 when brewing with your water. Think about what sort of brewing water you've got to start with. If you've got an RO, distilled or demineralized water, you're pretty much starting with a blank canvas. You haven't got chlorine or chloramines to ruin your brew, and you can start and build your water chemistry from scratch. However, if you don't want to go down that path, think about at least getting rid of the chlorine or chloramines out of your brew so that they don't cause trouble down the track. Alright, so my second tip, my second thing you can start doing today is thinking about the profile of the water you're using. And we're going to talk about brewing salts. The salts in your brewing water dictate the mouthfeel and the character of the finished beer. Do you want that bitter, dry IPA character? Then you're going to want more sulfate in your water. Do you want a softer mouthfeel, more like a porter or maybe even some sort of stout? Then you might want to increase the chloride level in your water. When you're thinking about the final mouthfeel of the finished beer, this ratio is important, this chloride to sulfate ratio. More chloride, softer, fuller mouthfeel in the finished beer. More sulfate, drier, more bitter finish to your final beer. So think about the type of beer you're brewing and what you want to end up with. If you want to experiment with this and you haven't done anything else with water chemistry, think about adding a little bit, maybe half a teaspoon or a teaspoon of gypsum to your IPA brewing water and see how you like it. If it's too much, then you can dial it back. If you want more, you can put a little bit more in. That's a simple way to start experimenting with how these salts work in brewing. Or maybe you're brewing that porter and you want a softer mouthfeel. Maybe a bit of calcium chloride, just a spoonful, half a spoonful in your brew, and see how that goes. Or if you're feeling really adventurous and you want to build a water profile from scratch, you can start looking at things like Brewfather's Water Builder Profile. I use that myself, and it's a good place to start if you don't know. You put in the water and what your water's like, the already canvas that you're building on, and it'll suggest additions of salts so that you can maximize the sort of water profile you want in your finished beer. That's a good starting point. Once you've done that, then you can refine that and work on it yourself. You can start building your own brewing profiles in Brew and Water, but that's a bit more down the track. For a starter, I'd recommend just experimenting with a little bit of calcium chloride, a little bit of calcium sulfate, and see how it results, and see if you like it, and tweak it from there. That's a good way to dip your toes in the water chemistry pool and see how you go. All right, my third and final tip is to think about how water chemistry impacts your fermentation. We don't often think about that, but calcium is crucial for yeast to finish up their job. They need at least 50 parts per million of calcium in your brewing water to let the yeast flocculate out and finish the job and get out of the way so that you can package nice clear beer. So if you do have a cloudy sort of finished beer and you've got yeast floating in suspension, this might be your problem. You might need to add a bit of calcium. How do you do that? Well, calcium chloride or gypsum, calcium sulfate is your option. What sort of beer are you brewing again? Think about that. Maybe you want to add a bit of gypsum for a hoppy beer. Maybe you want to add a bit of calcium chloride for a more rounded, fuller bodied beer. It depends, and it's up to you what you want to make at the end of the day. All these brewing salts you can get at your local homebrew store. So if you want to experiment, hop in there, check it out. But I hope this video has given you something to start thinking about water profiles, and how you can start experimenting with your own water chemistry at home. My quick checklist as we finished. 1, think about the problems with the water you're using. What's already in there, and do you need to deal with any chlorines or chloramines that are going to ruin your final beer? 2, think about the sort of mouthfeel you want in the finished beer. What you want to end up with in the end. Do you want to add some gypsum or calcium chloride to get you closer to that goal? And 3, think about your yeast. Do you have enough calcium in solution to help your yeast finish out its fermentation and get out of the way? So I hope you found these quick tips interesting, and if you did, don't forget to give me a like, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, hit the notification bell, all those YouTube things, and you might actually enjoy this video, which gives another 3 hacks for brewing better beer.